Once upon a time in the quiet town of Milburg, nestled somewhere in the heart of America, a 29-year-old man named Jake Anderson found himself entangled in a web of desperation and debt. Formerly employed at the local Domino's Pizza, Jake had recently faced the harsh reality of unemployment due to his struggles with alcohol addiction. Jake, who was now without a job and dealing with personal struggles, walked through the streets of Milburg. The smell of freshly baked pizzas filled the air, and he couldn't escape the sight of the Domino's sign in the distance, a constant reminder of the job he used to have. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake found himself standing across the street from the very Domino's pizza that had been a part of his daily life. The neon lights beckoned to him, casting a glow on his face as he contemplated his next move. Desperation gripped Jake's heart as he faced the mounting debts that loomed over him like a dark cloud. A recent eviction notice had forced him out of his apartment, and creditors were hounding him for the money he owed. His addiction had cost him his job at Domino's, leaving him with no means of earning an honest living. In the shadows, a figure emerged from the alley, a man with weary eyes and a hardened expression. It was Hank, Jake's former co-worker at Domino's, who had witnessed Jake's downward spiral. Hank approached him, a mixture of concern and curiosity etched on his face.
"Haven't seen you around here in a while, Jake. What brings you back to Domino's?"
Hank inquired, his eyes narrowing with suspicion. Jake paused for a moment, his tired eyes showing the heaviness of his situation.
"Hank, I'm in a really bad spot.
I lost my job, got kicked out of my place, and debts are stacking up. I'm lost." Hank sighed, realizing how tough things were for Jake.
"I understand. It's hard right now. But stealing from Domino's won't fix your problems, my friend."
The words lingered in the air as Jake glanced at the Domino's Pizza storefront. The aroma of freshly baked pizza dough wafted towards them, stirring memories of happier times when Jake tossed pizzas in the kitchen with his co-workers. "I know it's wrong, Hank, but I'm desperate. I owe money to people who aren't the forgiving type. I need to repay them. And I've got nowhere else to turn," Jake confessed, his voice tinged with desperation. Hank scratched his head, torn between loyalty to a friend and the moral dilemma of aiding a theft.
"There's gotta be another way, Jake. Let's figure something out together. Stealing from Domino's won't end well for either of us."
As the two former co-workers engaged in a heartfelt conversation, a passerby overheard their dialogue and recognized Jake. It was Clara, another familiar face from the Domino's crew. She joined the conversation, her concern evident. "Jake, stealing is never the answer. We're a team, even if we're not working together anymore. Let's find a way to help you out of this mess," Clara suggested, her eyes reflecting a genuine desire to assist. The three of them worked together to think of ways to help Jake with his money troubles. As they talked, the words Domino's Pizza came up frequently, a reminder of the challenges they faced and the bonds they formed while working at the pizza place. Over the next few weeks, Hank and Clara rallied the support of the Milburg community. They organized a fundraiser at the local community center, leveraging the goodwill of their fellow citizens to help Jake get back on his feet. The news spread like wildfire, reaching even those who had never set foot in Domino's Pizza. The town of Milburg rallied behind Jake, demonstrating the power of compassion and community. The fundraiser exceeded expectations, providing Jake with enough funds to repay his debts and secure a fresh start. The Milburg Gazette covered the heartwarming story, emphasizing the role of unity and kindness in overcoming adversity. Standing in the midst of the crowd at the community center, Jake felt thankful and relieved. The future, which had seemed bleak before, now had a ray of hope, thanks to the kindness of those who had once worked alongside him at Domino's Pizza. In the end, Jake's journey taught him that sometimes, when life throws you a curveball, the support of a community can be the ultimate game changer. The Domino's Pizza, once a symbol of despair, became a beacon of hope and redemption for Jake and his newfound friends in Milburg. As days turned into weeks, Jake took the opportunity to turn his life around. With the financial assistance from the fundraiser, he enrolled in a rehabilitation program to address his alcohol addiction. The Millburg community continued to stand by him, offering emotional support and encouragement during his challenging journey to recovery. Meanwhile, the story of Millburg's compassion reached far beyond the town's borders. News outlets picked up the heartwarming tale of a community coming together to help one of its own. Offers of assistance and messages of support poured in from people across the country, inspired by the small town's display of empathy. With newfound determination, Jake emerged from rehabilitation with a fresh perspective on life. He rekindled his passion for pizza making, not as a means of employment this time, but as a therapeutic outlet. The local pizzeria, not Domino's this time, welcomed him to volunteer, providing him with an opportunity to rebuild his skills and confidence. Hank and Clara, too, found their lives enriched by the experience. The bonds formed during the challenging times at Domino's Pizza transformed into lifelong friendships. The trio, once connected by a shared workplace, now stood as a testament to the resilience of human connection. Jake, once a lost soul wandering the streets of Millburg, became a symbol of resilience and the transformative power of compassion. His journey from the depths of despair to a life of purpose inspired many, turning the page on a chapter that began with the flickering lights of a Domino's pizza sign. In the calm town of Millburg, Jake Anderson's story became a real-life example of the lasting power in community connections. It showed that even tough situations could be conquered through compassion, unity, and a readiness to offer help.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so.
I don't understand, James. I'm worried about our son. He was just fine the day when we went there. Don't worry, honey. I think he's feeling unwell. That's why he's so quiet. Give it some time, and he will get back to normal. James replied in a calm tone after hearing my concern about Austin. I hope so, I said while taking a long sigh. My name is Martha Geller. I got married to the love of my life, James, at the age of 21. But even after 15 years of our marriage, I was unable to conceive. We tried everything and spent our entire life savings to get pregnant, but were unable to. After years of suffering and prayers, God finally blessed us with a son like Austin. He was our only child, and we loved him very much. But the problem was that for trying to get pregnant, we were not able to save a single penny to raise our child. Both of us are working to provide everything for Austin. He is 7 years old, and he was always a bright and cheerful child who could bring a smile to your face even if you were having the worst day just by his childish and cute acts. We used to be busy all week and were not able to provide much affection, but no matter the case, we would always go somewhere out to eat on the weekend by Austin's choice. Austin was asking to go to Domino's Pizza that day, but we could not take him, so we decided to give him a surprise. When we came back from work, Austin was playing with our cat Myuu. We adopted Myuu before Austin was born, and she loved him with all her heart. They were like siblings, inseparable. As we entered the house, Austin came running into my arms as always. "Austin, are you ready for a surprise?" James asked him with a big grin on his face, while I smiled softly, holding Austin in my arms. "Yes, Daddy!" he squealed in excitement and looked at me in hopes to find out about the surprise. "Not this time, Austin. This surprise is from the both of us, so I cannot tell you." I pinched his nose playfully while saying that. He cutely pouted at my response. James and I both started laughing, and looking at us laughing, he also joined in. We sat inside the car, and James drove us to the Domino's Pizza location that was on the verge of the town. When we reached, the time was 11:08 p.m., and their closing time was around 11:30 or something. As Austin saw us entering the pizza place, he was super happy and excited. The place was almost empty except for 1 or 2 customers that were sitting in there. We let Austin choose the pizza, and he ordered a family-sized non-veg cheese burst pizza for us. The order was ready within 15 minutes or so, and we started to eat. That was when Austin said that he wanted to use the restroom. "Do you want me to come with you, honey?" I asked while standing up from my chair. "No, Mom, sit down. I'm a big boy now. I can go on my own," Austin said, and he sneakily looked at the girl standing over to the corner. James and I looked at each other and smiled. "Okay, big boy, go on your own then," James said with a big smile on his face. I laughed, looking at Austin blush. He went to the restroom and we waited for him to come back. But Austin did not return even after 20 minutes had passed, which made me worried. A Domino's employee came and told us that it was closing time and we should hurry, so I decided to go and check on Austin. I asked James to come along with me because Austin had gone to the men's room. I waited outside the washroom while James went in to check. After a few minutes, an extremely worried James came out from the washroom carrying Austin in his arms, who was unconscious and had wet his pants as well. Watching my boy in that condition felt like thousands of needles had stabbed deep into my heart. I got so worried that I immediately snatched Austin from his arms and hugged him. I asked James about it, and he told me that he found him in this condition when he went in. We immediately took Austin to the hospital. The doctors told us that he only had a mild fever, and it was also because he had wet his pants. But his heart rate and blood pressure were a bit higher, which made it look like he must have gotten scared of something. After coming back from the hospital, I changed Austin's clothes and took him to my bedroom to sleep, because I was too worried to let him sleep alone. Austin woke up screaming in the middle of the night. I embraced him and patted his back and kept saying that everything was fine and that I was there for him. He cried without speaking a word, and after calming down, he finally slept while I stayed awake, looking after him the entire night. After that day, Austin lost his cheerfulness and stopped speaking, which made me extremely worried. He would often wake up in the middle of the night screaming because of a nightmare. I asked him several times, asking him about what happened in Domino's Pizza, but he kept quiet. After losing every chance to cheer him up, I remembered that he got a crush on the girl whom we last saw at Domino's Pizza, so I decided to let him meet her and ask him, "Austin baby, do you want to meet that girl from Domino's Pizza?" As I asked him this, surprisingly, his eyes got bigger in fright, and he started to scream and have a panic attack. "He's going to kill her! He's going to kill her!" And then he fainted. I did not understand what was happening. I called James and told him that I was taking Austin to the hospital and asked him to come straight there. As James reached, I told him to look after Austin and not to leave his side no matter what. I went to the Domino's to check what made my boy like this. After reaching, I asked around about the girl and found out that she had died. She went to the washroom the same night, and after coming back from there, she died from a heart attack. The strangest part was that she died after we brought unconscious Austin to the hospital. I still could not figure out what happened that day, and how did Austin know that she was about to die? But then one day, I found a drawing that Austin made that looked like a monster with devil horns.
I was raised over in Little John Island back in Maine. John has a small community of about 100 people just off the coast near Yarmouth. Technically speaking, it's long been incorporated into Yarmouth Township, and all the island kid bus across the bridges to the high schools there. But try telling that to the islanders. We never say we're from Yarmouth when people ask where we're from. We answer Little John every time. Maybe it's the fact that we're cut off by the ocean. Maybe it's just the people who live there. But this strong sense of togetherness and independence on Little John, kind of like a siege mentality only without the siege. As I said, the island kids used to catch the bus across the Talbot Road and the Sandy Point bridges in order to get to school, which included me. It just so happened that my favorite teacher, Coach Collins, was also an Islander, and he was my favorite teacher for 2 reasons. Not only did he teach history and coach the senior ice hockey team, but he was just an all-around nice guy too, and used to give me a ride home after practice. Since walking home during a Maine winter night can almost be downright dangerous. Coach Collins was the kind of guy that kids like me really looked up to. He almost turned pro after playing hockey in college, won a Bronze Star in Vietnam, and unlike many of his colleagues, in a way of talking to his students that made you feel like he was your cool uncle or something. He was the best. No one had a bad word to say about him, and for a long time, Coach Collins occupied some mythical status in the town's collective consciousness. So it's March 7th, 1989. I remember the exact date because Dino Ciccarelli was traded from the Minnesota North Stars to the Washington Capitals. He was the outlaw hockey player for a while, a complete jerk, but God could he shoot a puck. And it was all we talked about at practice at night. Then in the middle of practice, I looked and see my girlfriend's best friend Kelly standing at the edge of the ice. She starts calling me over, and when I get a chance, I skate over to see what she wants. Kelly tells me that my girlfriend wanted me to call her as soon as I got home. From the way Kelly was acting, I knew it wasn't going to be good news. Consequently, I'm totally distracted for the rest of practice. My shooting sucks, and I'm in a stinker of a mood. By the time it comes for Coach Collins to give me a ride home like usual, he does his regular approachable patriarch routine. He talks, he dishes out some wholesome advice, and suddenly I'm not catastrophizing so much anymore. I thank him, go inside, call on my girlfriend, and what are you now? She wants to break up. Coach's advice sort of stopped me from having a full-blown teenage heartbreak moment, but I was still upset. Only I couldn't just sit around eating ice cream and feeling sorry for myself. That was masculine upset. I was troubled, so to speak. I figured I'd steal one of my dad's beers and go for a walk in the woods, maybe stand out on Madeline Point looking all broody and such. So that's exactly what I did. Looking back on it, it was just puppy love, no big deal. But as I said, it bruised my ego enough to feel like heartbreak, and that's all that mattered, I suppose. Either way, I found myself wishing I could talk to Coach Collins about it again. A guy like that had seen and experienced so much, and he still managed to come home and start a happy, functional family. He'd know what to say. He'd know what it was I had to do. I'm almost a Madeline Point, and I'm right where there's a kind of fork in the dirt road. One way leads to the water. The other is the overgrown driveway of a long abandoned house. Now the sun hasn't quite set by that time, and there's still a little bit of that blue twilight in the sky, and it gives the rotting old structure this awesomely creepy vibe. So creepy, in fact, that I almost soiled my pants when I heard some car horn let out the short, sharp horn from somewhere real close by. I had no idea anyone else was around. The whole point of walking out that far towards Madeline Point was so I could be on my own. And since the place was normally deserted during the drizzly Maine springtime, I was kinda spooked that anyone was there at all. But by that point, I'm a little buzzed and naturally curious. So I started cautiously padding off down the overgrown driveway, trying to find the source of the honk, when I finally saw the truck that seemed to be parked deliberately out of sight among the trees. I couldn't believe my eyes. Remember how I said I wish I had Coach Collins to talk to, that I could have really used some of that wholesome, cool uncle advice he'd always had on hand? Well, guess what? Like some miraculous act of God, whose truck should I find parked in the trees but Coach Collins? This is weirdly comic moments at first when I'm super happy to see his truck. But I also realize I'm carrying the beer I stole from my dad. I dart back out of sight, toss the beer, then start chomping on the stick to double mint that I've been carrying to get the smell of booze off my breath. I'm just about to come back around the trees for a second time when the passenger door of the coach's truck swings open. I watched as someone basically falls out of it, stumbles through the feet, then leans up against a tree and starts puking. I could tell right away it wasn't Coach Collins. It actually looked like a girl. and it was confirmed when I heard the kind of high-pitched puking sound she made. Okay, I realize that might sound weird, but guys and girls puke different. It is what it is. But anyway, I started straining my eyes to see who it is. Light is getting pretty low at that point, and without being able to see behind the mess of long hair, it was hard to tell exactly who it was. But then I hear Coach Collins saying something from inside the truck. Only it didn't sound like the Coach Collins I knew the back in the truck. Maria. Then I realized who it was. Maria and I had chemistry together, so I had spoke to her once or twice, and she'd been a cheerleader for the longest time until recently dropping out of her squad. Her dropping out of the squad had coincided with a decline in her GPA and an overall odd shift in her behavior. A bunch of rumors went around that ran the spectrum of patiently ridiculous to sinisterly believable, but the truth had remained in the dark. He Had Something was definitely having a negative effect on Maria, and there came a moment when I realized I might have just found out what that thing was. In among the trees, maybe 40 or 50 feet away, I watched Maria wiping her mouth before the coach yelled something at her from the driver's seat. "Don't make me tell you again, Maria. Get back in the truck." Maria seemed to be fighting back tears, like getting back in the truck was the last thing on earth she wanted to do. Then I literally can't believe what I'm seeing as she turns, tug on her jeans a little that buttons and close. I'm glad I don't have to explain the connotation of that, because even after all these years later, the idea still makes my skin crawl. Only as Maria turns, I must have been leaning too far out from the tree I'm using for cover, because there's this one horrible moment where we both just lock eyes for a second. I assume I'm busted, so I start edging away before breaking into a run back toward Cousin Street. As I'm running, I keep expecting to hear the truck revving its engine, either to follow me or take off to avoid being seen again. But nothing happens. I just run and run and run until I reach the Talbot Road bridge that led back to Little John and home. Once I was home and had calmed down a bit, I started to wonder why I ran in the first place. I know it sounds horrible. In retrospect, the way Coach was talking to Maria should have told me everything I needed to know. There was a lack of empathy that she was vomiting, not to mention the question why she was vomiting in the first place. But I was young, scared, and embarrassingly drunk off of one beer, so I tried to rationalize. I didn't even really see Coach Collins, and it's possible that someone else in the area owned a truck the same model as his. Sure, the voice sounded like him, but that didn't mean it was. Besides, if something shady was going on, surely Maria would have told me since she'd seen me and all. But thinking of it, had she seen me? Maybe I just imagined she had. And if they were doing something awful, why not speed off or give chase? There was a lot that I could interpret as being totally harmless, but there was a disturbing amount that indicated that what I had seen was something very, very wrong. But then, what had to be do about it? Accuse Coach Collins, the small-town war hero, a father, a husband, the best hockey coach in the Northeast, of being a freaking predator? That was unthinkable to me. What if I accused him and there was a perfectly reasonable explanation? I'd be a pariah. I wouldn't be able to show my face around town, let alone at hockey practice. The same hockey practice I love had and he coached? I'm sorry to ramble. I just need you to understand my mindset about it and why I kept so quiet about the whole thing for a straight week. I know it was the wrong play. And to everyone reading this, especially to Maria, and sorry, you just have to understand. I figure if anything was going to go down, it'd be the next day at school. Maybe Maria would confront me about spying on her or something. I had no idea. Everything was still so unclear at the time, hence my hesitancy to act on it. But nothing happened. No one said anything. Coach Collins passed me in the hallway and just said morning like he normally did. I tried to act normal about it. I tried to push it all way in the back of my mind, but I've never been very good at hiding the way I feel. I know people notice the change in my attitude. Mother weekend, My mom was asking why I was being so quiet. I told her I was just tired, but I guess it's because it's the only thing I wanted to talk about was off limits. I especially couldn't act the same around Coach Collins, and it was only when I went to check out his truck after school that I got any sense of reassurance. I noticed that there was this big Support Our Troops sticker on his back bumper, something I didn't remember seeing on the trunk in the woods that day. But as much as I tried to ignore it, the fact remains that I simply may not have noticed it at the time, because understandably I was very much distracted by other events. But still, I kept my mouth shut, and actually took a few more days before I actually did anything about it. The day I broke was exactly a week after the event for 7 nights straight. All I thought about before I drifted off into an uneasy sleep was the possibility of Coach Collins being the voice in the truck, of how if he was doing something seriously evil to Maria right under the noses of everyone in town, then I had to do something about it. I wouldn't be able to live with myself otherwise. So I decided to approach Maria. I couldn't just ask who she was with promise to keep my mouth shut and live with the consequences. I didn't have to drop Coach Collins' name, and I could just gauge her reaction to the question. And when I looked at it like that, it seemed all easy and simple. I mean, she told me if she needed help, right? And that's what I did. I came up with Maria after chemistry one afternoon, asked if I could talk to her in private, apologized for what I was about to ask, then just hit her with it. Who were you with near the power station last week? The way she looked at me at first made me think she was about to just deny it. This mocking and crazy kind of look. I cut her off with, I know as you I saw you. And you saw me too. I just need to know who you were with. After that, all her bluster just melted away, and the confident ex-cheerleader began to look like a scared little girl. No one, she said, and just walked off towards lockers. I tried one more time to talk to her about it, but as she walked past me in the school parking lot, all she had to say to me was leave me alone. That was the crushing moment that I realized that my worst fears had come true. And then nothing about little John could ever be the same for me ever again. The trouble was, I was at something of an impasse. Even if I did tell the cops about the coach, she'd have to actually want to talk to someone about it. Otherwise, all I had was a baseless accusation that might ruin my life completely. If I was going to do anything, it needed to be well planned and delicately executed. But just what that was, I had no idea at the time. And the week since I saw Murray in the woods, I had skipped hockey practice twice. And the times I showed up, I ducked Coach Collins when he asked me about my usual ride home. But that evening, when I fumbled for some excuse about going over to a friend's house to study, he said something that made my stomach tie itself into a knot. Get in the truck. The tone was almost the exact same as he had been in the woods previously. If there was any doubt still left in my mind, there wasn't after that. Part of me wanted to just get in the truck and go back to pretending like I hadn't seen anything. Or if I did, it was all perfectly explainable. But the other part of me, the rational part, told me that getting in Coach Collins' truck was a very, very bad idea. I told him no. Nothing else. Just one solitary no. And what followed were a few moments of silence as I saw a look come over the coach's face that I'd never seen before. He became cold, expressionless, and only later did it occur to me that what I was looking at might have been the last thing one or two Viet Cong guerrillas saw before. You know? Then he spoke. Have you got something you want to ask me, son? I just shook my head. Good. Because being so close to graduating, it would be a shame if anything were to keep you from your studies, wouldn't? He said, and waited for a response, and I didn't say a thing in reply. Kid like you has a lot of potential. You can enroll in some fancy college across the country, get some well-paid big city job, and just leave little John behind. Never look back. You understand me? The horrible thing was, I didn't understand. I heard what he said, and I saw the appeal, but I hated him. I felt betrayed, and I wanted everyone to know he was a liar, a cheat, and a predator. So after a week of doing nothing, I finally went home and told my mom. I know it was something I should have done a week prior. It was obvious just from how tactful she knew how to handle the situation. She drove over to Maria's house, talked to Maria's mom. In private, she was quick to add. Then the pair of them approached Maria and I didn't even know, used their mom magic to just coax it out of her. But the time she got home around 10, just 3 hours after she left, she said Maria and her mom were ready to go to the police. Only the thing is, unlike Hollywood movies where there's usually some big resolution and everyone gets their just desserts, etc., this story doesn't have a real end to it. Coach Collins was questioned by police, but since the DEA or judge, whoever, didn't think there was enough evidence to push for a trial, the coach was never arrested or charged with anything. Maria, on the other hand, died in a car accident where the other driver was twice over the legal limit, just smashed into her and her sister while they were coming back from Portland one night. It was a horrific tragedy and meant that whatever secrets Maria had went to her grave with her. But the cherry on top is not only was Coach Collins never punished for what he did, but he was right about me. I went into a college on Seattle, ended up getting a job here in Oregon. Mom and Dad moved into Portland as they got older, so I've not been back to Little John in almost 20 years now, and honestly, I'd like to keep it that way. I can't stand small towns in general anymore. My wife thinks that's cutesy and kitsch, but only because she grew up in Chicago. Me, I know how small towns work. I know they all have dark secrets buried just below the surface. But unlike big cities where bad things happen all the time, people just don't see it. In small towns, people know all about the bad things, and it's not that they can't see it, they just choose not to.